Hello and welcome to the Recovery Matters podcast from CCAR, the podcast where putting recovery first is always the goal. Here we present interviews, discussions, stories, and speeches to cultivate the understanding and acceptance of the power, hope, and healing of recovery from alcohol and other addictions. Here are your hosts, Phil and Sandy Valentine.
Good morning, Sandy.
Hello.
Are you okay today?
I am excellent. It's a gorgeous day outside.
You wanted me to start today. You didn't have anything at all. Nothing.
The only thing I was thinking about is that we're going camping.
I was actually going to start with that too.
Yeah.
And what do you think about camping?
I wish that the trailer was already there and we were just driving down and popping in. That's what I think.
Why, you get nervous with me towing it up, or is it just an ordeal to like hook it up and pull it and do all that stuff?
Yeah, it's watching you on the ground trying to lift up the jacks, and you're on the ground for this, you're on the ground for that.
I have to get it set, right?
Yeah, I know. So
I'm not complaining, am I?
No, you're not. You
Oh.
haven't complained at all.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'll be good. It'll be good to get. It's supposed to be a gorgeous weekend.
It is. Amanda, have you ever camped before?
I have. I grew up camping.
Yeah?
Yep, my grandparents had a big trailer, and they used to take us to Maine to go camping, or Tennessee.
Wow.
So,
well,
yeah.
those are some big differences, Maine or Tennessee.
Yeah, yep. We used to go all over. And something, my mom and all of her siblings still try and do like a giant sibling camping trip once a year. I haven't done it in the past 2 years, but...
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Did you grow up in Connecticut?
I did. Yeah.
Whereabouts?
So I grew up primarily in Southbury.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, so over by Middlebury and kind of Danbury.
Isn't that where we bought our camper?
Mm.
Somewhere out that way?
Yeah.
You don't remember.
It was in the middle of the state.
Yeah.
I think, is it Middlebury and Southbury? That's more west, right? Near Waterbury?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Waterbury,
Yeah,
Middlebury,
So
Southbury.
no, Phil. Anyway.
We bought a used camper. We got a good deal. So when you went camping, what was it like? Was it tents and
My
Or-
grandparents always had a camper.
like a big one or a...
I mean, it was big enough for us. As a kid, it seemed huge.
Yeah.
Now looking back, I'm like, maybe it wasn't that big.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we got older, we did tent camping until my mom reached a point where she decided she was not sleeping on the ground anymore. So she used to pop the trunk of her minivan and put like a bullet mattress in the back of it, and she slept in there and we slept in tents.
Oh, wow.
I get that completely.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
That's why we ended up with a camper.
Yeah. She loved the experience, but the ground she was over.
Yeah. Siblings? Sounds like you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have an older brother and two younger sisters.
Wow.
We were camping with our grandkids, I think the summer before COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we were both on the ground in our tent.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't like that, so you slept in the passenger seat of our vehicle.
Yeah.
You didn't like that either.
No. Again, that's why we have a camper.
And that got a very expensive solution, but
It's not very expensive.
well,
A
it
more
is.
expensive solution.
You want to talk about Amanda?
I want to talk about Amanda.
Okay.
Okay. So what was little Amanda like? That's always Phil's line. What's little so-and-so
So
like?
first of all, tell us what you do here at CCAR, and then we'll go into what you're growing up, anything you'd like to share.
Okay, so I'm an emergency department recovery coach.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
How long have you been
amazing.
doing that now?
Almost a year.
Yep.
Yep, creeping
Mhm.
up on a year, and it's incredible. It's really incredible to walk into that like crisis situation where someone's really hit a low, and to just be like, "Hey, you can recover." You
Yeah.
know? Yeah. My last experience in the emergency department was very different, so I try and kind of do the exact opposite of what I experienced.
Oh, so when you went to the emergency department, you were not a coach at the time.
Right, I was not a coach. This was prior to my recovery, and
Yeah.
I didn't have anyone friendly there. I was handcuffed to a stretcher, and I had a police officer next to me. So
And I remember you saying he wasn't the nicest police officer.
He wasn't. Maybe, if I was in a different place in my life, he would have been incredible. But at that time, no, it wasn't a good experience. So
Right. So we heard that you grew up in Southbury and you camped a little bit. What's your earliest memory, and what were you like as a child?
Oh, my earliest memory.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably, I come from a big, loud Italian family. There's a ton of them, and I am like the opposite of that. I've always been pretty quiet, kind of like okay being in the background. So my earliest memory is like me at these family parties, and there's a million people there, and I'm just kind of like looking around. Everyone was great. I had a ton of cousins, a ton of aunts and uncles, but I was always just kind of a little bit uncomfortable with a lot of people around, a little bit quieter. So
we had, Sandy and I have 4 children together, and I have a daughter from my previous marriage. And a couple of our children, including Colleen, was always in sponge mode, we would call it. That we always thought that if she just sits there and is quiet, nobody would notice her, and she'll get to stay up later and hear more stuff.
They absorb everything.
They hear everything. They can tell you about it years later.
All 3 of our girls
Yeah.
definitely have that ability.
Yeah.
So you must have been soaking it all up.
Yeah, I used to just kind of melt in the background and, later use what I heard or kind of like be a support or, hey, this is going on. And people would be like, oh, you heard that? But
What'd you like to do?
I like to be outside.
Did you?
Yeah, I like to climb trees. So I always thought my older brother was like the coolest person in the world, and I wanted to be just like him. Unfortunately, he's 3 years older than me. He didn't think I was as cool. But so anything he did, I was like, I want to do that too.
And could you?
No.
No.
My dad was like, I don't know if playing football is really a good idea.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. I mean, I was little, and I thought he was so cool. But I really liked kids when I was little. I did a lot of volunteer at, like, my church nursery, and I was always around little kids. I had a million little cousins and little siblings, too, so it came very natural to me to always have, like, a baby with me or, kids around.
I was the same way. I connect with that for sure.
Yeah.
Some of our girls were the same way, too. Yeah. Yep. So what happens? So tell me about school for you.
So I had no problems, elementary school, middle school came, and it was hard, that transition for me. And I'll never forget one of my best friends, like, really betrayed me in 7th grade. And it was like this huge event. Looking back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so little. But at that time, it felt like the biggest thing in the world to me. And I kind of went downhill from there.
What was the betrayal?
She started talking to friends from a different school.
No, she didn't.
I know. Can you believe this? But then
we've had the same thing happen too, right?
And then those friends didn't like me, so they picked on me, and and it just kind of started this me feeling like I wasn't good enough, and I couldn't fit in, and I had to, like, I wasn't comfortable in my skin anymore,
Yeah.
So.
And you solved that.
Yes, I did. So, that started like a little bit of depression and early stuff for me there. And, I started going to therapy as a young kid. I was prescribed medication when I was 13 that probably shouldn't have been prescribed.
Did your parents send you to therapy because they could see how despondent you were over the breakup, if you will?
Yeah. My mom really was like, we should probably get you some help because I was pretty depressed.
That's pretty tuned in and courageous for you to agree to do it.
Yeah, I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
It was really sad. So, I got put on some meds that definitely didn't help me, kind of just shut me off of things. And then I went into high school, and I ended up not fitting into the mainstream high school, they said. So they sent me to an alternative education school. So it was me and 20 other kids with, I think, 4 teachers in, like, the basement of the superintendent's office. And I did great there. It was tiny. There was only, a couple people, a couple teachers. I felt comfortable to be myself. I got really good grades. And I wanted to go to school and become a doctor. And, I got scholarships for college. My parents were so proud of me. And, I went to college and I had access to other substances. And there was no one telling me, hey, you should probably go to bed, or hey, that's probably not a good idea. And so drinking and using stuff just took off then.
So what was it in high school that they were seeing that put you in the alternative program?
I think I was really withdrawn from other kids. I was really depressed. There was, like, self-harm going on, and I just couldn't like function in that classroom
Yeah.
and in that whole big high school.
Mm-hmm.
So while I think it was great for me while I was in high school and I learned to feel a little bit more comfortable with myself, I was not prepared for college.
Yeah.
You know, going to a college campus where there's a ton of people, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming.
Where'd you go?
I went to Bay Path College in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
I only made it a year. And I decided to come back and go to school for medical assisting.
Mm-hmm.
And by decided, I mean I was kind of like, you're no longer welcome here. I had done a lot of drinking and, you know, really not going to class and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, Phil and I were recently talking about our college experiences, and I made it 3 years before I was not able to continue.
Yes. 3 years is pretty good.
But, yeah, 3 years of drinking and not going to class. And
I made it 4 years, only because I was clever at talking my way
you're
back
so
in.
charming.
That's true.
I'm missing out on the charm.
I got in
factor.
trouble, though, when my grandmother died for the 3rd time, so...
No, you didn't.
I did.
Oh, my gosh.
It was over then. They were like, 3rd time? Really? How many grandmothers do you have?
So when you left Bay Path, did you move back in with your parents?
Yeah.
And
I did. And there was like the agreement of you have to be doing something, you know, educational. You can't just hang out. So when I'm really interested in something, I thrive. I do great. You know, this is wonderful. I was really interested in medical assisting, so I did great. I had started dating my best friend at the time, and I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter. And so that relationship turned super abusive, you know, physically, mentally, emotionally. As soon as I found out I was pregnant is when the abuse started. So,
Do you think that was tied? Those two were tied?
in my head, I do. I mean,
Yeah?
maybe it's just because the timing of it, but I definitely connect them.
Wow.
Yeah, it became like an ownership kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was challenging, to say the least. And I decided not to, you know, pursue that medical career. My parents were opening up a deli, and, you know, you can work here, and I could still live with them to help me with the baby. And my addiction really jumped once my daughter was born. Yeah.
You know, Orca Kevin, right? He worked in his grandparents' delis for a long time, too. I just find that interesting.
Yeah.
I love delis.
I'm kind of hungry now.
Well, we had a long restaurant career, too. We actually met working in a restaurant, but we don't have to tell that story.
No.
Okay.
No.
So why
Do you
do
mind?
you...
Well, wait. I'm curious. Do you mind if I ask what your drug of choice was?
Yes, so it started with prescription opiates, and then it went to heroin and Xanax.
What were you prescribed as a kid?
When I was 13, prescribed Xanax.
Xanax.
Yeah.
At 13.
Yeah, and then when I was 15, I had surgery on my shoulder, and I was prescribed prescription opiates. So looking back, I'm like, my poor brain didn't even have a chance to, you know, fight any of that off.
No.
Yeah.
And so it almost turned you into a zombie, it sounds like. And
Yeah,
maybe
it
that's a
was-
little just kind of like, wow.
Yeah,
How'd you hurt your shoulder?
car accident.
Really?
Yeah. Simple little tiny one where, you know, somebody slammed on the brakes and I went forward and back, and it just enough to kind of tear some ligaments in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you play sports at all?
I did. I played softball for years.
Really?
Yeah, I loved it.
And what position was your favorite?
Catcher.
You were a catcher.
I know.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
Fast pitch
How are your
softball
knees?
too,
They were good then. You
right?
know.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So
Could you hit? Yeah. Power hitter?
I have 3 home runs in my history.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it. But yeah, I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I did.
Left-handed or right-handed?
Right.
Right-handed. Yeah.
you know who is a big softball player too is
Rita.
Rita.
Oh,
The
really?
New Haven.
Oh my gosh, I'll have to talk to her
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah,
I didn't know
yeah.
that.
She's
So
a
you-
shortstop.
When you're living with your parents and you have a baby, were you able
Yes.
to end that relationship or?
Well, not by any choice of my own, but
Yeah.
I think that was like my first God moment when he got arrested for stuff completely unrelated to me,
Yeah.
and he was sentenced to a long time in prison. So I was kind of like saved by the grace of God there.
Hmm.
And are your parents picking up on what's happening with you?
They knew, but I think they had ideas. I shouldn't say they know. I think they had ideas, but I was a pretty good liar, you know.
Yeah.
And I think going through that situation, it's something like I've never experienced before, and the shame that you feel, and, you know, like it's your fault somehow. And if I was to say anything, I was betraying this family that I was making, and it was really hard time. And I don't think I honestly and openly said it out loud until probably a year and a half later, maybe 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you say you didn't say what a year and a half, 2 years later, what did you finally say?
Oh, when I finally said, you know, like I was getting beat up.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, at that point, I can only imagine like what my parents felt and what they were going through.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, my mom was like, I knew it in my gut, I knew it, and I just couldn't get you to say it. And there was, you know, on their end, no proof of anything. You know, it's when you're not home a lot, it's easy to say, oh, well, I bumped my face on this, or I used to say, I accidentally closed my face in the car door. You know, how realistic is that? It's not, but in that twisted moment, I really thought that people would believe that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you was working in the deli, so what did, and you said your addiction picked up? Was that mostly alcohol, or it was everything, right?
So by the time my daughter was 6 months, I would say I was full-blown addicted to prescription opiates.
Mm.
Yeah.
And what was a typical day like?
Gosh, I get like goosebumps thinking about it because it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
You know.
But the reason we can talk about it is because of where you are today.
Yeah. I would wake up, and the first thing I did was, you know, make sure I had a wake-up pill.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it throughout the day. And I would take care of my daughter, and I would, you know, bring her to daycare, or if my mom was staying over that day, and I would go to work. And, you know, I always wanted to work a million hours, because if I was busy and focused on something, I didn't have to really think about anything that emotionally I was dealing with or should be dealing with, you know. And yeah, it was a downhill spiral for sure.
And so work was an escape in some ways.
Yeah, I used to always be like, oh, I'll work.
And what'd you do at the deli?
So I managed the deli with my sister. I don't know how well I managed it. But
is it still open today?
It is, but my parents don't own it anymore.
Right, so you did okay, I guess.
Well, you know, I guess it depends on who you're asking, right?
Yeah.
I made a good sandwich, but the rest of it, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
So I did like inventory and ordering and scheduling, and customer service was my big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And catering. My dad used to be like, all right, you go take care of that, because, you know, I guess maybe at that time people pleasing was a big thing for me, so it was easy for me to work with customers, because I'm like, absolutely, whatever makes you happy, I'll take care of it. You know? So that was my big deal, was catering there.
What were some of the big events? Do you remember any big events?
Oh, it would be like corporate parties, birthday parties, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Needless to say, food service is not something that I ever want to go back into. You know, it was great for the time being. It helped me, but no thank you.
Yeah, it's a tough business, too.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else drink or use drugs in the food service business?
Does anybody not?
I was just going to say it's more to find someone who doesn't.
Yeah.
I was being facetious. That was when I was manager of a restaurant. Would pass stories.
I didn't know you were manager.
Well, I don't know if I ever actually had the title, but they would let me close. And the bar would, I think it was either 1 or 2 in the morning, used to be able to be open till, and I would lock the door to the bar at closing time. The only problem, there were still like 10 people inside. And the mirrors would come off the wall, and my gosh, it was not good. And pretty soon, oh my gosh, we got to get out of here. The sun's coming up, you know. Not a good life. It's not a good. I get like that feeling too inside, right? It's not a good life. So even Don's over there shaking his head, going, "Oh,
not fun."
We all know it.
Yeah.
We all know what that's like."
But it was easy to maintain, you know, in that industry. My parents owned it, so I never had to pass a drug test.
Mm-hmm.
I would stroll in whenever I wanted, and they might be like, all right, Amanda, you need to be on time.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt untouchable. Like, are my parents going to fire me? No, probably not.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely took advantage of the whole situation. Definitely.
And you were still living with them.
Mm-hmm.
And you also worked a lot, though, too. So, but would you say you were reliable?
No.
No.
I wouldn't say that.
Really?
I'm sure my parents would agree that I wasn't either. Yeah, because if I didn't have what I needed to get through the day without being sick, I wouldn't show up. If I was angry, I wouldn't show up, or I would be in the bathroom, partaking in party things, and for 20 minutes my dad would knock on the door like, you have to come out, people need to use the bathroom.
This was you or this person?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
And we don't know each other really well, but seeing who I'm talking to now, it's hard to imagine. Isn't it?
I'm glad to hear you say that.
No, it's hard to imagine because
Yeah.
you seem... I remember working in restaurants and the people that were very volatile. Like, they'd get angry, they'd stomp out of the place and not come to work, and then they'd call a day or two later and, can I come back to my shift, that kind of thing. And my mother dealt with that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With you. No, I'm
I
just
don't think I dumped a stack of pizzas on Bernie once, but that was about it. And I left and worked at Adams Mill for like 7, 8, 9 months, and then went back to Pastores. So I had my little spats. I know you find that hard to believe.
Not at all.
my
You had one 2 nights ago.
Occasional hissy fit. I had one 2 nights ago.
Yeah, but we'll save that
No,
for
what was that
another
one
time.
about?
I asked you to take Mary's picture in a way that you didn't appreciate the way I approached it.
Oh, well, yeah. And I was definitely halt at the time.
Hungry, angry. You couldn't have been
I don't know if
lonely.
I was angry, lonely, tired.
Lonely, tired.
So I was all set. Let's take your picture, Mary. And she's like, no, I got up early. Mom already took my picture.
I texted you.
Uh-huh.
I texted you.
I didn't get a text.
Oh.
See, this is what happens.
Amanda?
We go down this rabbit
Yes.
trail. But I can relate to the hissy fit. Not like you ever... You ought to have more hissy fits, by the way.
I don't.
You just cry.
Yeah.
You just sit down there, you get quiet, and then 7 months later, it'll come up and you'll cry about it. And I'll go, that was 7 months ago.
We all have our process.
I know.
So when we started
She didn't
talking...
deny it either.
When we started talking, you talked about your last experience
Yes.
in the emergency room, being handcuffed to a bed by a police officer by your side.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit how it got there. How'd you end up there?
I'll give you a quick version.
I like the long version.
I mean, do you want me to tell you about every rehab I was in?
Yeah.
I am someone who was in and out of rehabs and detoxes all the time. On the 10th time is when I finally surrendered. So this last time I had been in a program and my family was no longer interested in having any type of me in their life around them, understandably so. And I was kind of bouncing around between homeless shelters, hotels, and my poor parents. They really tried to help me. I have an uncle who's a police officer who's amazing. He used to come searching for me outside, and super grateful for my family, absolutely.
Where's your child in all this?
My parents just said, we'll take her to avoid any type of, negative reactions. And there was never any court orders or anything like that. And they knew I couldn't do it. I needed to get help. And so the last time I found myself, I overdosed in a bathroom at McDonald's. And I don't remember any of it besides waking up handcuffed to a bed.
Was this heroin, or what was it?
It was
so
a mixture of heroin and Xanax.
So you had gone to that somewhere along?
Probably like 3 years into prescription meds I switched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why did you switch? Just so people know.
I mean, it's cheaper.
Yeah.
It was easier to get.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole kit and caboodle.
Right.
I got a little teary-eyed when you said that you're in and out at 10 times. because I met with a student yesterday who hasn't made it to college yet, but has returned to use through the many programs he's been in over the last 2 years. And I told him to just hang on, to not give up hope because of these stories that we're so privileged to hear, that you're so willing to share, that you just don't give up hope, because sooner or later it's going to click and you're going to get it. So don't give up. And, you sharing that is just like really affirmation.
I used to go to a couple of programs frequently, and I remember there was a counselor there who used to say to me, just keep trying, even because I would be so embarrassed to go back. And sometimes I would leave and, come back within like 30 days, and there's still some of the same people there, clients. And she used to say to me, just don't stop fighting. Just keep coming back. Just keep trying. And so even at like my lowest and most embarrassed and most ashamed, I would think like, I just got to go back,
What program was that?
There was a couple. So I'm like on the other side of the state. I would go to MCCA in Danbury often. Yeah. I went to Arms Acres in New York probably 5 times.
Yeah.
I went to a couple other ones here and there, 1 or 2 times. But those 2 were, like looking back, the 2 most prevalent that really had an impact.
And I just think of the thought of you overdosed in a McDonald's bathroom. It's like heartbreaking, right? Yeah. And just so continue the story from there. Obviously, you don't remember overdosing, so
right. I don't remember
waking
that.
up, probably.
I remember waking up after I was Narcaned, and they were putting me into the ambulance. Mm-hmm. And I remember just saying, I don't have any drugs on me. I didn't do any drugs. Clearly lying, out of my mind. I have drugs all in my pockets and all types of stuff. And then I don't remember anything until waking up at the hospital. And I remember I really needed to use the bathroom, and the police officer was like, I don't think so. He said, you're not going anywhere. And they wouldn't give me my clothes, so I'm in a hospital gown. I'm confused. I just woke up. I'm like, what is going on? And there was not, at that time, not a single friendly face. No one would explain to me what was going on. The police officer sat there on his phone, and he said, just shut up. Just shut up. As soon as we get the clearance, we're going to lock up. And I was like, for what? I've never even gotten a speeding ticket in my life. So I was like, how could I possibly be getting arrested? Mm-hmm. There's obvious reasons as to why I was getting arrested, And I remember going into that lockup, and the police officer who was taking my mugshot, he had my driver's license, which was expired, but it was from probably 7 years prior. And he looked at it and he said, what the hell happened to you? And I didn't know what to say. I mean, I really didn't. And I laid in that cell, no blankets. I'm shivering. I'm still in the hospital gown. They won't give me my clothes. I have like a roll of toilet paper. And, there was just being a young woman in that environment. It was cold, like emotionally cold.
How old were you?
I was probably 25 when that happened.
Gosh.
And how long ago was that?
Oh my gosh, how long ago was that? Almost 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. And my saving grace, I think, is that's the first time like I prayed and really prayed, not just like a foxhole. It was like, I need to change, and I don't know how. So
Is that what you prayed?
Yeah.
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 I remember my prayer was just help me.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was praying to or who I was praying to. I just knew I needed help.
Yeah, me either. Had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know how, but for some reason, instead of going in front of a judge, they assigned a social worker to me, and she encouraged me to go into treatment. And
what town was this? Did you get locked up in?
Waterbury.
You did?
Yeah.
And wow,
mm-hmm.
That's kind of a miracle that they actually moved you to
a social worker.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how it happened. And she had told me just go to detox, but I knew.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to detox like a million times. So I told her, I said, detox isn't going to work for me. Mm-hmm. She said, well, why don't you try a 28-day program? And that was all I had to do was a 28-day program. And I just kept asking for help. and I stayed in programs as long as I could.
Where was the first 28-day program?
I actually went to New Prospects in Bridgeport,
Uh-huh.
which is dual diagnosed, so I
Right.
was able to work on my mental health as
Mhm.
well as the substance use.
Mm-hmm.
I got put on the right medications. I had apparently, had untreated ADHD for my entire life. I never knew. Once I got put on the right medications, it was like, oh my gosh, maybe I can recover. And I jumped into it.
So untreated ADHD, do you think did you have that before getting treated with Xanax, or do you remember it?
I don't know. For me, it's not like an outward, I'm hyperactive,
Right.
I'm running around. For me, it's like my brain is
Bounces.
boing, 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 and
So-
I procrastinate, and I can't finish anything.
You and I have that in common,
Yeah.
and it took me just a couple years ago when our son was telling us he had trouble concentrating and doing this and this, and he took a test online. He's like, "Dad, take the test." I took the test and went,
Yeah,
I went,
it's mind-blowing. You're like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense.
I wasn't surprised.
I know. But it was finally I found a job. I've been at CCAR now for 22 plus years that works well with my ADHD, that I can bounce from
Yes.
things to thing to thing to thing. There'll be some things I procrastinate about, but I like to just bounce. Even like hiking the Appalachian Trail or being on the beach fishing, there are so many things of interest. How can you walk all day? I said, every step there's something new to look at,
Yeah,
or
something to look at.
or another new problem to solve. It was wonderful, So, you agree with that diagnosis now, obviously.
I do, and I think from the time I was a little kid, I was anxiety. Oh, you have anxiety, you have
Yeah, me
depression,
too.
but I think untreated ADHD can cause those things.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I still think I, have some of those. It's all in my family. But, I remember being in middle school, and they pulled me out of lunch with the other kids in recess to have me in a stress group to try and teach me how to, deep breathe and calm down. And, at like 11, 12 years old, I'm like, why am I so weird? Why am I different from the other kids, And I think if I had, if that had been addressed earlier, it would have made some of that time a little bit easier, I think.
Isn't it funny how we think about being different than, and we think everybody else is this certain way?
Yep.
And then we realize as we get older that everyone's different. They just all kind of either bond together or come together and have their own groups, and sometimes we feel like we're a part of it, and sometimes we don't. But it's strange that we always want to feel like that need for connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is so strong. We had Trey Laird in here the other day talking about one of his motivating factors through his whole life was to be part of a team. And I think maybe talk to us a little bit about what being on the softball team did for you.
It was incredible. I felt like I fit in. I felt like I had a group of people who had my back. I think that bond that I made with other girls on that team, even now, like if I see someone, I'm like, hey, we played softball in third grade together. We were awesome. I think that's really important. I think it helped me. I try to encourage my daughter to sports, even physical activity with other people. You're making that bond while you're doing something, that's good for you.
Over the years, I've seen team sports get more and more of a bad rap, because of the hyper competitiveness, and we're missing the point. Because when I was a coach, it wasn't so much about winning and losing. As a matter of fact, that was probably as I evolved in my coaching, it became less and less important. It was about how the team progressed together, how they got better together. And a lot of the teams that I coached, a lot of the members are still in touch with each other today and still friends. So that's I think we lose sight of that.
My nephew, he's 8. He just had his first football game ever this past weekend. So, we all went, and that's how it was. It was almost like a division of parents, the parents who felt like it was really important for, the kids to win, and they're running up and down the lines, and you have 1 quarter left, you got to keep it together. And then there's some of us who are like, good job, you ran after the ball, because I think when you work together as a team, it's just overall better.
Yeah, it's just, and that's what the kid is experiencing. Yeah. I don't know if some kids are more concerned about winning than others, and it's all okay. I mean, I just think parents get a little over the top. Just let the kids play.
Right.
You know,
I'm
just
like,
let
they're
them
so
play.
little. They're only 8.
Parents get a little over the top.
You think I got over the top?
Oh, yeah.
When?
You would be talking smack on the side of the game, mad at this and that. You
Yeah,
wouldn't be
but-
yelling it out to the kids.
Who was I talking smack with?
By the way, not as a coach.
And who did I talk smack with?
Sometimes by yourself.
I don't know about that. There was always someone there, but it was more about like the strategy of a team. So I don't know about smack or the referee made a bad call.
Right.
I'm not yelling at the referee or the kids or the coaches, am I? Talking to myself.
You don't yell at the kids.
That's a little eccentric. That's a little ADHD. I love that about myself, that I can have a conversation and entertain myself anytime, any place.
Anyway,
Yes.
was that the last treatment program you went to?
So I also spent a lot of time at MCCA's Sobering Center in Danbury between programs, and I will cry talking about them. The director there, I really think, had a huge role in helping me save my life. I will be forever grateful to him. He really saw something in me that I didn't see.
Well, so
And
who was that?
his name is Peter Pizzillo.
Nice.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a bad rap because he wants you to stick to the rules.
So
but-
what's a sobering center?
So it's like a transitional facility between programs. So when I got out of detox, I knew that I was not safe by myself. So I was able to go to the sobering center and wait for a bed to open up at this dual diagnosis program, which had a really long wait list. So I ended up being, between detox and the 28-day program, I ended up being at the sobering center for like 2 months. And it's a small place. There's a lot of people, which is hard for me. You know, in a social situation, I was like 6 days, you know, in recovery, and I'm like, oh, this is weird. And I grew there. You know, there was a schedule and things were expected of you, which nothing had been expected of me in a long time. And I respected the staff. They respected me. And it's funny, the case manager there is, you know, years later now she's my sponsor. And I will never forget, I walked in there and I was like this broken shell of a person. I couldn't hold eye contact. I really couldn't talk without stuttering. I was so anxiety ridden. And I just said to her, I don't think I can do it. And, you know, at that time I'm still reasoning like, well, maybe I can, you know, do Xanax, but not heroin and not alcohol. She was like, maybe. Let's just see how today goes. And she said to me, if I can do it, you can. And she was like, you know, this woman, she's dressed in business clothes and her hair's done and her makeup, and she looks beautiful. And she just radiated this confidence of, you can do it. Like she didn't bat her eyelashes. Of course you can do it. And at that point in my life, I was like, I mean, maybe I could. If she's telling me, maybe I could. And I went to that 28-day program, and then I went back to the sobering center for a couple weeks. Then I went to a 90-day program. And, you know, throughout all of this, the sobering center takes you to meetings. So you're in this transitional facility, and they take you to outside meetings, which to me was like a huge deal. I had only tried 12-step meetings a handful of times prior, and I was like, oh, it's not for me. You know, I'm different. I'm different. And they really stressed, you know, get a sponsor, get someone who will take you to meetings. And so I couldn't have the case manager there be my sponsor. Right. Obviously, that's a conflict of interest. But she was from the area, and she sponsored other women in the area. So I got what I thought was the next best thing, one of her sponsees to sponsor me. And she changed my life. This calm that she had and this peace, like she was totally comfortable with who she was. She has this like loud laugh you can hear from anywhere. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like you're comfortable, you know? And she took me through the big book, changed my life. You know, she really taught me a lot. And I started like building this connection with a higher power and going to meetings consistently. That was a big deal. So then I was making that connection with other people, which I hadn't felt in years. So even throughout going to these programs, I was already working the steps with her, starting to go through the big book and making these connections with other people in recovery. So then when I went back from the 90-day program, I went back to the sobering center, and I stayed there for probably another 2 months. And MCCA has these sober condos that they're affiliated with. So I moved in there and I stayed there for about a year. And throughout all of that, I just felt like I had this whole team of people who was like rooting me on, like
a team.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, like you can do this. And when I doubted myself, they were just like, "No, what are you talking about?"
What were you doing for work at the time? Were you
so
doing anything?
while I was in treatment, I was not working, and then part of
your full-time job was
recovery.
Yeah,
it had to be.
Yeah.
It had to be. And then when I was transitioning over to the sober living, part of it is you have to get a job. So I got a job washing dishes at a convalescent home. It was mindless. I didn't have to be like emotionally invested because I really needed to focus everything that I had, all my emotions and everything on recovery.
Did you ever wash dishes like in a restaurant?
Yes.
I loved it.
Cleaning up after you.
No, I was a great dishwasher, especially when you had those big machines.
Yeah, you just push it through.
I know.
I used to put headphones
and
on
the
and
sprays
music.
and all that stuff. I loved
You'll
them.
have to show me how you wash
We
dishes.
don't have the proper equipment. We just don't have the proper equipment. You have to show me how to mow the lawn.
We could go on for
I was going to say, I don't know how long this is going to go on for,
Yeah.
but
Let's get back to Amanda.
Okay, let's do that. So you're washing dishes, though. I always liked it because you had really dirty dishes come in, and then when they came out, they were nice and
Sparkling
clean. You could put them away. Yep. I agree with you.
Yeah, and it was something that it was satisfying. Spray everything off, put it through. I could listen to music, which has always been really helpful for me, and I just went with it.
What do you listen to?
All right, I listen to like a variety of different things.
All right.
Like if I could just show you what I listened to on the way here this morning, you'd be like, who is this person?
Well, I think you and I would get along probably.
Yeah, I can't put like a description of what I listen to. It's everything. A little bit of everything.
Well, you have to give us at least 5 things you listen to on the way here then.
Okay, so on the way here, I listened to Charlie Wilson.
Who's that?
Charlie Wilson, I'm Blessed.
Do you know Charlie Wilson?
Not personally.
Oh my gosh, I listened to that song every morning the first year of recovery.
See, that's why I ask, because I like to get new music.
Yeah, it's incredible. It really
I listen to Elevation Worship on the way here.
Okay. Okay. Then I listened to some like local, well, not local, but like hardcore bands. Always a big Korn fan. And then I listen to hip hop. All different things.
Do you ever listen to any 70s music? Like Pink Floyd,
There's no need.
Steely Dan? No.
No.
I had to took a while, but my kids are listening to it now. They appreciate it. What did you used to listen to, Sandy? Why you laugh?
The Bee Gees and Sean Cassidy. So, but I don't make you listen to that, do I?
I don't make you listen to it.
Okay.
My dad raised us listening to country music, and my mom raised us listening to rock and roll. So now, even now, if like my dad has country on, my mom's like, "Are you kidding me?" And if my mom has rock and roll on, my dad's like, "All right, enough of this." So I had like these 2 totally different genres, So if you put on older music, I'm
We
like,
take our rides to Rhode Island. I mean, you make it seem like it's torture for you, but I let you listen. We listen to country Christian. You just really
You
have
invented country Christian.
You really have.
I
this
don't know
thing-
where I ever came into play with that.
You really have this thing about she can't stand the Grateful Dead, so I don't know what that's about. But anyway, tell us a little bit about why and how you think music affects you and helps your recovery.
I think, first of all, it gives me like peace. I always find peace in music. I feel like I can relate to people. If I put on a song and I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally get that, then I feel like I'm not the only one. Also, something about, depending on my mood, if I need to like clean or something, I'll put on a certain type of music, or if I need to calm down, I'll put on a certain type of music. I don't know, it's always been calming to me.
I had, when I was on the Appalachian Trail, I had these trail mixes. See what I did there?
Yeah, it's cute.
Yeah, trail mixes. Don, you like that?
I like it.
Trail mix. So I had a steeps trail mix, so that when I was climbing up, I needed something that was, really going to drive me up that mountain.
It's going to pump you.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Like Bang Your Head or Billy Idol, Moni Moni or something like that.
Sure.
Sure. So you're, okay, let's go back to the post-dishwashing. What happened next? So I want to get to the point where, how did you end up at CCAR, But what was your little career before?
So I was encouraged to apply for a job working in the mental health field.
Mm-hmm.
The director, Pete, who I've talked about, he encouraged me, said, I really think, you might really work out well here. So I applied for the job. He had no problem giving me, a recommendation. And I started there. What was my role there? I'm trying to remember what they call it. Basically, I was just on site to help with chores and, medication, make sure they took their medication, stuff like that. And after, I was there for maybe 90 days, and they asked if I'd be willing to accept a job as a case manager. And I was like, me? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just learning to manage my own life, but sure, I'll definitely help. And just went from there. So I had a caseload, and I worked at a 24-hour supervised program. So everyone lived on site, so I got to know the clients really well. And after doing that for probably 9 months, they asked if I'd be willing to accept a position doing case management out in the community. So I had a caseload of people, and I would, make a schedule and drive to different people's houses and work with them. And we used to create treatment plans, goals that they wanted to accomplish and how I could help them with that. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved working with that community. I felt like I was, really serving a purpose, helping people.
Mm-hmm.
And then how did I get to CCAR after that?
Yeah.
So I knew someone from through the rooms who encouraged me to apply here, who was working here at the time, and said, listen, it's an awesome place to work. I think you'll really like it. And so I wasn't going to apply. I have to be honest, I was not going to apply, and my sponsor and I sat down. She made me do a fears list. We went through everything, and she was like, you need to apply. Every reason that I could think of to not apply, she was like, nope, you need to apply.
So what were some of the reasons that might be helpful for others that you were finding that you, what ended up on your fear list?
Oh, gosh, I should pull it out someday.
Yeah.
Change. Number one, change. I was comfortable. I was comfortable at my position. I knew I did a good job at it. I knew management liked me. I never had any issues there. Geographically, the location. I worked 7 minutes from my house, and then I was like, well, this position, I'd be traveling, and, I don't know if I'd really like that. All these reasons that I'm giving myself not to come. Another one is something that I think in recovery for me that I constantly work on is, am I good enough? Can I really fill those shoes of other people that are doing this? Because I look at myself and I'm like, me? I'm going to help somebody? I don't know. And my sponsor wasn't having any of it. She was like, absolutely not. Go type up your resume. Let's go. So I applied not really thinking, not expecting anything. And I said, well, that's what she said. What can it hurt to apply? And then I remember when Jolie called me, I cried. I was like, are you kidding? And I was so excited. So that's something.
She called you for an interview or said you had the job?
For an interview first. Yeah. And even then I started crying. I was like, wow, really? And the first interview was over Zoom.
Yeah.
And then they called back for a second interview. I cried again. And that one was in person. And a little intimidating, I have to admit. I'm like, I have no idea who any of these people are. And you walk in the room and there's, a couple people there. So initially walking in, I was like, oh my gosh. And then everyone's so friendly and they're kind. And
everyone was masked probably?
Yeah. Everyone was masked. So I couldn't really tell people's face. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes it even harder.
Yeah. And I didn't know who to direct my eye contact at. Because they weren't I'm the supervisor, I'm this. So it was just a room full of people that was leadership, which was different to me. In the past I knew, okay, this person's in charge, this is who I answer to. So I walk into this room with, I think there was 5 people, all have masks on, and they're all just like, hey.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I think it was 5.
Rebecca, Jolie, Jennifer.
Regina.
4.
Maybe 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 might be right.
5 with you.
5 with me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Seemed like 100.
So that was a year ago?
Yeah, September.
And you went through the Recovery Coach Academy?
I did. Yes, online. Every training and everything I've done has been online. Which is, I think, to be able to access that kind of information, those kind of training online, I mean, look at how many more people we can reach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it was interesting.
What was it like going back into the emergency room as a coach?
It was like a mix of emotions. I felt like an imposter at first. You know, like when I was shadowing people, I was like, there's no way that I'm doing this. And then, you know, when they're like, all right, go ahead, you know, have a conversation. And at first I was like really nervous because, I mean, the coaches that taught me are incredible coaches. So I'm like, how could I ever live up to this, you know? And I just took a little bit of what everybody else did, you know, to kind of create like an art that worked for me.
Yeah.
And now I walk in and I feel comfortable. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. You know, these are the people I want to be helping.
Mm-hmm.
Any desire to go back and visit with that police officer? Because I do. I want to go.
Phil and I talked about that, last week, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I've thought about writing a letter, sending a picture, and Phil was like, why don't you just walk in there?
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea their names or anything, so I would just have to give them the date that it happened. And, hey, just wanted to let you guys know, you know.
Yeah,
I'm
they
doing
would
all
have
right.
it, arresting officer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
yeah,
I want to film it.
yeah. And all the charges got dropped and everything, and throughout all that time in treatment, I kept bringing, like, clean urines. And even when they were like, okay, you're done, I was like, well, I just want to show you guys, like, I'm not, like, I'm okay. I'm working on this, you know, I'm moving forward. Yeah. And at the time, I think maybe that's what I needed to hear from that police officer.
Yeah, I think we talked about that too.
Yeah.
It might not have been delivered, but that point is like, what the hell happened to you? Is like that kind of shock to say, what did happen to me?
Yeah.
You know, what did happen to me? What's your life like now?
Yeah, what's family life
Yeah,
like?
what's your life like now?
I have a beautiful life today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. So my daughter she's in my life.
How old's your daughter now?
She's 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, she started middle school, so she's very, like, preteen,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So she doesn't live with us full-time right now. She's still with my parents, and she goes back and forth, half the week with us, half the week with them. And she's like, Mom, you know, I just don't know if I'm ready to, you know, fully move out of my grandparents' house.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm cool with that. You know, I'm not going to push her, because there was a lot of years where, you know, she suffered directly from me. So in time, we'll see what happens. I'm engaged to my best friend, who's also in recovery. He's incredible. And we have twins who, they'll be 2 in October.
Wow.
Yeah, it's, I never thought that I would be happy. I really didn't. And, you know, life happens in recovery. So my pregnancy with the twins was terrifying. There was complications, and I had to see specialists early on, and they were born prematurely, spent time in the NICU, and now we're healthy and we're happy. We are getting different kind of services because maybe their brain's a little bit different than some people. So we're working with an incredible organization to find out what support we can give them, you know, to be the best that they can be, which as a parent can be challenging.
Yeah. How premature were they?
They're born 6 weeks early.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was in the hospital from 32 weeks until they were delivered.
Yeah.
And I had to see a specialist twice a week. The doctor said to me one time, he said, it's just out of your control. It's just out of your control. And to me, I hear that in meetings all the time, you know, it's out of my control, and that's something that I practiced in my life. And so hearing that from a medical provider, I was like, okay, I'm listening, you know, like I hear you. And it made it a little bit easier to get through things, but definitely scary stuff.
Yeah, we have nephews that were born at 31 weeks, so.
What's their birthday?
October 7th.
What?
Yes.
Well, Phil's an October baby.
Oh, you are?
October 5.
Okay, so you're close.
Librans, yeah, we're well balanced, can't you tell?
So there'll be 3?
There'll be 2 in October.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you walked through.
I'm also a Libra.
Are you?
September 29th.
All right. Coming up.
Yep.
It's our son-in-law's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
You knew that, right?
No.
Yeah. I knew he didn't know.
Sorry about that, Stefan. It's in my calendar, but I just didn't know it off the top of my head.
It's on your Facebook post, probably.
Maybe.
Reminder. But think about, like, having had to walk through all that not in recovery, you know, and all those tools just help us deal with life, whether we even had an addiction or not.
Right.
It's something I'm so passionate about. Like, folks, you don't have to have a dependence on drugs or alcohol to benefit from the tools of recovery.
My mom says that all the time now.
Yeah.
She's like, and my pathway is 12 steps, and my mom will say, I wish everyone had a 12-step program they can work. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you could.
Yeah, so what does mom and dad think? They've been with you every step of the way, more or less, right?
Yeah. My mom, they never gave up on me. They had to, of course, set boundaries at some point because I was,
and there's a difference
training everyone.
with that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And now I spend time with my parents. They like me, which is really cool because I know they always loved me, but they definitely didn't have to like me back then.
Well, do you like them?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, last night my mom and I just took the twins to the grocery store, and we got dinner. It was just like, I mean, years ago I wouldn't have done that with her. My dad comes over, and the really cool thing is we talk about my future, which, like right now, my parents are working on planning engagement parties and a wedding, and at one point, they're probably really more thinking about funerals than that. So that gift that I can give them of like being alive, is something pretty special.
And you're still so young. Yeah, you got a lot of life in front of you. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about a typical day for you or a case in the emergency department that just resonates with you, or what's it like for you?
Gosh, there's so many different. My favorite coaching sessions are ones where I really can make a connection to someone who maybe is like, I'm not sure if this is for me. I'm not sure if recovery is for me. I can tell someone who's homeless, I can walk in and say, I was too. Even like phone calls. Yesterday we had a mother reach out, and Kevin asked me to call her in regards to her daughter. And I talked on the phone to her for like 40 minutes, and she was like, this is a perfect job for you. You and my daughter have so much in common. And the cool thing is her daughter and I do have a lot in common, and I've been in the same situations. But now I can show you that, like, you can recover too. Stuff like that. I love that. Or some of my favorite times are when I meet someone who's really angry in the emergency department, cursing at the staff, and I'm like, all right, let me just take over. I'm pretty good at staying calm and just letting them vent it out. And something I've learned, throughout my own recovery is oftentimes when people are really angry, it's because they're hurt. They're scared and they're hurt. And so if I can just be that person to, like, love on them, that's it. That's what I want to do. I have one recovery who I met, gosh, probably back in October or maybe November. And she was, screaming at the staff. She wanted to get out of there, smoke a cigarette, And I just sat there and let her vent. I'm like, listen, I get it. I get you're angry. I was too. I get you're scared. I was too. And that's hard to admit that you're scared sometimes. And now she calls me, and, she's still trying to figure out what works for her. But she still keeps in touch with me. Her aunt calls me all the time. She'll call me, hi, Amanda Angel. And, oh, I love you so much. And this is someone who's been through a lot of abuse, a lot of neglect. And she knows I'm there. Right now she's in Florida, and I just talked to her on Monday, and she's like, okay, I'll call you next week. And so that kind of connection with someone who is really angry and in a lot of pain and feels completely hopeless, if I can just be that constant in their life, I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to.
Did you ever think you'd be called Amanda Angel?
Definitely. Definitely not. Maybe when I was like 5, but...
That just warms my heart. That's such an incredible story.
Yeah, she's amazing.
You talk a lot about your 12-step background. What do you think about multiple pathways, and how does that play into recovery coaching?
Yeah, so I fully believe in multiple pathways. I've seen it in real life work. I've knew about a few pathways, in and out of programs. I thought that I needed an Amanda pathway, I was really unique. Everybody, I have to do this on my own. But I saw people recovering different ways, and I just had to figure out which one worked for me. So when I'm working with someone, I generally share my experience, what has worked for me. But like the key thing is listening to them, because you know you best. So if I have someone say to me that, nope, I've tried that, it absolutely will not work, or I can't believe in that, then all right, let's find out what can work. I think I can always do more work to become more educated and skilled in all different pathways. But at least if I don't know something, I can research it, or I can ask questions and find out who does know, so I can help the person.
Right.
But,
and you talked a little bit about your art of recovery coaching, finding Amanda's art.
Yeah.
How would you describe that for you? What are your real gifts?
I think,
and I know that might not be
sounds
the
like an interview question.
Well, no, I know. Well, we are
kind of is. I think staying calm, number one.
Yeah, you said that.
I think being a good listener, but I also think like being encouraging and supportive is huge, and I think being able to relate to people.
Yeah.
In the emergency department, you see all different people, all different walks of life, all different backgrounds. I mean, everyone you meet has a different story. And if I can make a connection with them off the tiniest little thing, that's huge.
Now, you got hired during COVID, or right after, or right
throughout COVID.
Throughout the whole thing. So
Yeah.
how many people do you think you've talked to in the emergency departments?
Well, that's a really good question.
In the last year or so.
I'd have to pull up my records to find out.
Okay.
Maybe a couple hundred, maybe.
Wait, what?
I don't know, maybe 200.
No, I would say so. Probably 200.
Sure.
Think about that.
Yeah.
200 different over a time.
That number might not be right. Like, don't quote me on that.
I know,
I'm not sure.
I'm just saying it's more than 5.
Definitely more than 5. Yeah.
And so it might even be more than 200, knowing the emergency department recovery coach caseload.
Yeah, I would have to really look.
And to think where you've come from in a short period of time to have that impact on that many people already, to be able to plant those seeds of hope, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And
really...
you went from that place of, can I do this? I think I told you when we talked a couple weeks ago that I'm a big fan of your sponsor, because she pushed you, and now you are helping so many people, and you've evolved to be an amazing coach.
Thank you.
It's your role.
Thank you.
It's what you do. Yeah.
And it's, to me, like, it's such an honor and a blessing. I never thought in a million years that I would be where I'm at today, and then to have this opportunity to work here, it's crazy.
Why don't you ask her, what's it like to work here? What do you think of the organizational culture here?
I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Really?
Yeah.
And you're kind of on, I don't want to say you're definitely part of a team, but you've never been to an in-person staff meeting except for our gathering in June.
I wasn't there because my kids had therapy.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So we had an emergency department recovery meeting. My gosh, when was it? Maybe right after I got hired, because I was still introducing myself to people. And other than that, I haven't been to anything in person.
Yeah, so it's hard to maintain a culture through a virtual space, but I'm so pleased to hear that you feel connected and part of a team, and that you're working well together and all that. So
yeah, I work with some really incredible people. I really do.
Yeah. Anything else you'd want anybody to know?
About me or about CCAR?
Anything about recovery.
I mean, it's possible for anyone. It's possible for absolutely anyone. That's something that I try and voice to every person that I meet. I don't care where you are, where you've been, you can recover. There's not a doubt in my mind you can recover.
Well, and I had one last question I wanted to circle back. You talked a lot about being prescribed medication for mental health issues. What's that like for you today? How do you...
So today I take my medicine as prescribed. I check in.
Was it prescribed for ADHD now or depression or?
So I take a medication for ADHD.
Yeah.
It's not a controlled medication, non-narcotic.
Yeah.
Very honest with my doctors. As soon as I walk in, I'm like, please, I don't want anything that even has a potential and maybe a little tiny percentage of anything that could be addicting. So anyone in my life knows, like, that's the first thing I say, because I don't ever want a chance going back to that person that I was in that place. It's really dark there. And so I take my anxiety medication. I'm sorry, not my anxiety medication. My ADHD medication.
Yeah.
Should have taken it today. And my depression medication. So.
Nice. And how else do you take care of your recovery?
Oh, I have to go to meetings. Just go to meetings. I talk with my sponsor. I work my steps. I do a lot of my sponsor and her sponsor and like my sponsee sisters. We do like women's groups throughout COVID. We were doing it on Zoom, which was such a blessing that I was still able to see these faces and, still connect with people, because I didn't necessarily feel comfortable going to meetings in person. I have these 2 little babies at home that I'm like scared of. So I did a lot of Zooming. I still do a lot of Zooming. And the only meeting I go to in person now is my home group. We'll see what happens, take it a day at a time with COVID. And, I sponsor other women today.
Do you?
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a full life. I'm glad you shared it with us today.
Thank you. I'm just blessed. Really blessed to live the life that I have today.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.
Are you nervous still?
No, I'm okay now.
Okay, good.
Are my cheeks bright red? Yeah.
Yeah, mine too, probably.
That's right.
That's it.